Hello and welcome back to Weston the Historian. Today I'm going to be doing a video which is a little different than what I usually do. But I had some weird thoughts about Teen Titans of all things, and I just wanted to share them with YouTube because I don't know, I think it's kind of interesting and I haven't heard anyone else talk about this. I'm sure this was like something that everyone knows about and that I'm just figuring it out, but I think, and of course, this might be absolutely ridiculous. I think the character of Raven from Teen Titans, not Teen Titans Go, the original show Teen Titans in the comic books, is a metaphor for Jesus Christ. Now, I'm going to ignore the comic books because I haven't read them and I do not care. But in the show, right? So we have to start off. To start off, we need to talk about who Raven is and her character and her story arc. So, to start off, Raven is essentially the daughter of Trigon. Now, in this universe, Trigon is like one of the most powerful creatures in the entire universe, and he's like the personification of, like, he's kind of their version of the devil, but he's like the personification of sin and evil and death itself. Pretty much every bad thing comes from him in this universe. And of course, it's very different from Jesus Christ, who is the Son of God the Father. And I will get to why it's different like that in the very end of this video. But so Raven is the daughter of Trigon and a human woman, and she pretty much is just living her life with all these special powers, and she knows, oh, this prophecy, I am destined to fulfill this prophecy. But she is trying to make up for it, and she's trying to do good, and she's trying to prevent the prophecy from actually happening. But she knows that she has to, commit to it. She can't get out of it. It's this prophecy that will 100% happen, and she can't do anything to stop it. So, the show, just as it goes on, it's getting closer and closer and closer to her, prophecy coming true. And I want to say it was the second to last season. I forgot what season it was. I am going completely off script if you can't already tell. She, like, all of these signs start appearing, and she suddenly realizes, oh, the prophecy is coming true, and I can't stop it. It's just coming. And she's grappling with this, and she's, having all these problems, and she's not telling anyone, oh, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to bring about Trigon entering into the world, and everything's going to, be destroyed. Trigon's going to take over, and she's not telling anyone this. And eventually Robin figures it out. Slade comes back, and he's like working for Trigon. He was promised like all these powers and stuff by Trigon, and Raven, Slade basically, like, it's a very disturbing scene. He tells Raven, "This is your fate. This is your destiny. You can't stop it." So eventually the day comes, and the prophecy is going to come true, and she has no choice but to just accept it. So she tries to make the day as good of a day as possible for the rest of the Titans. So she's like taking them places, she's like cooking them breakfast and all that. They're all going around. She just is like, seems in this really happy mood until eventually the moon is like blocking out the sun, and the darkness descends upon the land, and everything kind of goes dark. And she realizes, okay, it's coming true. And like all these like symbols start appearing all over her, and the prophecy eventually comes true. And they try to hide her away. They try to fight Slade and his like weird Hellfire army away, but they can't. And eventually Raven just accepts it. She leaves and she goes with Slade, and they try to stop her, but she has fully accepted her fate. She's fully accepted that this is what she's destined to do. And she just goes with Slade and goes with their army, and she accepts the prophecy and accepts her fate. and they take her to this weird little shrine area, and they try to stop Raven. They try to stop her from, letting Trigon into this world, but she has fully accepted her fate. She can't be stopped, so she blocks him from trying to help her escape. And she pretty much leads to Trigon entering the world, and it seems like she's dead. And Trigon enters the world and he takes over, and it seems like all is lost. They literally think, oh, everything is lost. Nothing, we're dead. We're all dead, right? But no. She is still alive. And Robin, he has faith. He has faith that there is a way out. So he journeys out and he finds her, and she's underground or something, and all surrounded by flames, and and they journey out of this cave, and they eventually reach she's scared and all that. She has already accepted the prophecy, and she thinks that all is lost and all that, but eventually Robin, he convinces her, no, it's not all lost. So they journey back to the surface, right? And they, after they journey back to the surface, they eventually have this standoff with Trigon, and she pretty much has this little monologue about how Trigon isn't her real, even though she is biological father and all that, she pretty much says, these people are my family. You are not my family. And she pretty much casts him. I don't even remember if she killed him or cast him into another dimension. I haven't watched this in months, but she's and at the very end of this little fight scene, pretty much everything goes back to normal, and she's wearing white robes, and everything is good again. And here is where Jesus Christ comes in, all right? Just hear me out on this, right? So, first of all, both Jesus Christ and Raven were born from some sort of powerful being, right? In this universe, in DC, she's born from Trigon, who is pretty much sin and evil and death and the devil, and all of these evil things combined. But Jesus Christ is a begotten son of God the Father, so very different in that sense. But they're still both the children of extremely powerful beings. And not only that, they both have a prophecy. They both are brought into the world for a reason. They have to fulfill this prophecy. And if you read the scriptures, if you read the Bible, you'll find that Jesus Christ is actually, as time goes on, he knows that he has to do it, but there are times when he is scared. There are times when he's scared. He's praying to God the Father. He's desperately praying that can there be another way? Can there be another way? Can I, do I really have to die? And he knows that he has to, and eventually just accepts that. So as it goes on, there's, Jesus Christ doing that, but he kind of tells everyone, but he tells it in metaphors and all these ways that it's the apostles, his disciples, they just don't fully understand what's going to happen. And they never fully understand until after everything is fulfilled. But what happens is, Jesus Christ, he does all these miracles, all of these things throughout his life, which are kind of similar to Raven's weird magical powers and trying to do good in the world. But eventually, when the day comes, Jesus Christ, he takes his apostles, and they die, and they have the Last Supper. And I think the day of the prophecy where Raven takes everyone out and they go and eat breakfast and they go out places and they all have fun, and she's serving them, is a weird metaphor for Jesus Christ in the Last Supper. And eventually, darkness falls over the land, and DC in the DC in Teen Titans, darkness falls over the land, and it's, Raven's gonna die. And that's actually exactly what happens in the Bible. Jesus Christ, when he is taken and put on the cross, darkness falls over the land, and there's like rocks that shatter and stuff like that. And not only that, I think Slade is like a metaphor for like Pontius Pilate. Well, maybe not Pontius Pilate, but the people, the like high priests and stuff, who took Jesus and put him on the cross, and they're, expecting that they were fulfilling God's plan, but they really weren't. I mean, no, they were not. But technically they were fulfilling the part about, Jesus Christ dying on the cross, but they were not, doing this for God. They thought they were doing God's, they thought that they were on the side of God, but they were really, killing God the Son until eventually he came back. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So basically, Slade is like some metaphor for these people who put Jesus Christ on the cross. But eventually when Jesus Christ dies, everyone thinks, oh, all is lost. And that's what happens in Teen Titans. Everyone thinks, oh, all is lost. Trigon is taken over. Death is taken over. Sin is taken over. Evil is taken over. Was all of this just a lie? Was this all for nothing? But eventually, on the third day, Jesus Christ comes back. And this is what happens in Teen Titans. Raven comes back. And she is still alive. And everyone is shocked and amazed. Like, oh, she's back. That's amazing. And not only that, but in Teen Titans, Raven is more powerful than ever. And in the Bible, Jesus Christ, he's not a ghost. But it's bizarre because people, like, the stories make it sound like he's more, I don't know. I'm just going to ignore that point. If you still can't tell, this is very unscripted. I already mentioned that earlier in the video. But, yeah. So, Jesus Christ is a metaphor for Raven in all these senses. And, like, eventually, and I think, the whole Raven killing or banishing Trigon is a metaphor for Jesus Christ conquering death and conquering evil and conquering sin. And, like, just all of these conception of it is just gone. And I think one of the most revealing parts of this is like Raven's weird monologue about her real family, that being like the Teen Titans. She says, these are my real family. Because in the Bible, Jesus Christ says, who is my mother, who is my father, and who is, and he calls these people around him who are not his biological siblings. He calls them his brothers and his sisters. And he calls them his sons and daughters, and he makes people sons and daughters of him, and it's all this like interesting family dynamics, you could say. But yeah, and I think to close out, another thing which I addressed this at the beginning of the video, there's like some things in it which are like, oh well, that's a little like inconsistent. Like, how can Raven be a metaphor for Jesus if her father is like evil itself, and Jesus Christ's father is like, the creator of all good things and the producer of all good things? Well, I think that was not like some weird way of saying, I don't think that was like some Gnostic way of saying, oh, well, the creator of the universe is bad and Jesus Christ is good. I don't think it's like some weird Gnosticism or anything. I think it was more just to make the metaphor harder to detect. So people with super high IQs, no, I'm just joking. So just people it would be harder to detect. And also so like it wasn't a direct copy, I mean, it would be a little too obvious if Raven was like literally the daughter of like a virgin, and she was like her like, if she was born from a virgin and the daughter of like the DC equivalent of God or something. But also, just to close out, I just want to mention some like random things which I noticed, which are just kind of like not that big, but like kind of, oh, well, that's an interesting thing. Trigon. Trigon's name is Tri, which means three. Tri means three, as in the Trinity. It's like, I don't know, like, just think about that. It's kind of interesting. So Trigon, Trinity. But other than that, there's also one interesting thing in medieval and Renaissance paintings. You'll notice that they always portray Jesus Christ in red. And throughout the show, one of Raven's defining physical features is she has this little crystal thing on her head. And do you know what color it is? It's red. Also, she wears blue, which is actually what Mary, the Virgin Mary, was depicted wearing blue all the time. So, I don't know. I'm just saying. So, thank you for watching today's video of my completely disorganized thoughts. If that made sense to someone, that would mean the world to me. If that made any sense to anyone out there, the whole Raven is a metaphor for Jesus Christ, Trigon is a metaphor for sin and death, and Slade is like a metaphor for like, oh my gosh, I forgot to mention this. I have to mention this. This is one of the most interesting things. When Raven is found, she's deep underground. Now, I think, according to, Christian doctrine, according to it, in the 3-day period that Jesus Christ was dead, he descended down to hell to save people who did not have the opportunity to be saved before he, died. Before he lived and died. But I'm just saying, I think the whole Raven being found underground, especially in this like fiery area, is a metaphor for that part of Jesus's history, I guess. But I don't know. I just think it's really interesting. So just next time you watch Teen Titans, just think Jesus Christ. Just think of Jesus. Think of the Bible. And you're going to notice these little weird parallels. These are just, So, today's Disorganized Thoughts. Disorganized Esotericism, brought to you by me. Goodbye.